This is the southern tip of Europe, the last mile of Spain before Africa. Except the last mile is not Spain. This is Gibraltar, a British territory on a rock at the mouth of the Mediterranean, and about 33,000 people live on it. Where the rock meets Spain, a fence has run across the sand for 118 years. On the 15th of July, while the world watched the World Cup, the Czechs stopped and the fence came down. A border that has been argued over for 3 centuries simply opened. And the strange part is who opened it. Britain left the European Union to take back control of its borders. 10 years on, the only land border Britain has actually erased is this one. So this film is about how that happened, and about what a border becomes when the fence is gone but the argument is not. The argument starts in 1713. Britain had captured the rock during a war over the Spanish throne, and in the peace that followed, Spain signed it away. The treaty hands over the town, the castle, the port, and the forts, and it does so, in its own words, forever, without any exception or impediment whatsoever. But read the grant closely and something is missing. It cedes the town and the port, and it grants them without any territorial jurisdiction around them. It says nothing about the flat, sandy strip that connects the rock to Spain. Britain moved onto that sand anyway, and during the Second World War it laid an airport runway across it. To this day, Spain holds that the strip was never given away, which means the airport sits on land 2 countries read 2 different ways. In 1908, Britain fenced its side of the strip. Spain has refused ever since to call that fence a border. In Spanish, it is simply la verja, the fence, because a border would mean the line is settled, and for Madrid, it never has been. In 1967, Spain pressed its claim, and Gibraltar answered with a referendum. 12,138 people voted to stay British. 44 voted to join Spain. Franco's answer came 2 years later. In June 1969, Spain locked the gate at La Línea, and then it cut the telephone lines. Overnight, the fence stopped being an inconvenience and became a sealed wall through the middle of ordinary lives. It stayed shut for 13 years. Workers from La Línea lost their jobs on the rock in a single day, and families with relatives on the other side were cut off with no phone line to replace the visit. The 2 towns sat a few hundred meters apart and could not touch. What reopened the gate was not a settlement. Franco died, Spain turned toward Europe, and joining the European community came with an expectation attached, because the community's borders are open ones. The gate opened to pedestrians in 1982, and fully in 1985, and Spain joined the year after that. Then Britain voted to leave. In 2016, the United Kingdom chose Brexit, and Gibraltar voted to remain 96%, the highest share of any place that voted that night. It made no difference. The rock left with Britain, and its one land border became an outer edge of the European Union again. That mattered, because Gibraltar runs on crossing. About 15,000 workers commute in from Spain every day, which is more than half of the territory's entire workforce. They come out of a region with some of the highest unemployment in Spain into one of the highest income economies on Earth. A hard border here means hours of queuing, twice a day, for the people both sides depend on. So 4 governments, London, Madrid, Brussels, and Gibraltar itself, spent years building a way out. A framework on New Year's Eve of 2020, a political agreement in June of 2025, and a treaty signed in Brussels on the 14th of July this year. And the treaty does something unusual. Instead of settling the argument about the line, it moves the border somewhere else. The land frontier is now simply open, with no booths, no stamps, and no fence. The controls moved instead to Gibraltar's airport and its port, where Spanish officers now check travelers into Europe's free travel area beside Gibraltar's own officers, the way British and French police share a hall at the Eurostar. Gibraltar has joined nothing. It is still outside the European Union, and still outside Schengen. The border did not disappear, it moved to the airport. Because on the question that started all of this, whose rock is it? The treaty says nothing at all. Both claims stand, word for word. The text itself declares that nothing in the agreement affects sovereignty. 300 years of argument were not resolved here. They were set aside, on purpose, so that everything else could move. That is what came down with the fence in July. Crowds gathered on both sides of the line at midnight, and people walked back and forth over ground where their grandparents had queued, just because they could. The claim survives, in Madrid, in London, and on every map that still marks the line. But a border is 2 different things at once. It is an argument between states, and it is a fact on the ground. At Gibraltar, the argument continues, and the fact is gone. For 3 centuries, 2 capitals have contested who owns this rock. The 15,000 people who cross it every morning have stopped waiting for the answer.